Good morning, everybody, and good Sabbath to you. May the blessings of this seventh day of creation flood over you and begin to heal your soul, heal your mind, heal your bodies, and begin to touch the emotional trauma that you've experienced and bring a soothing calm to it. Bring the light of the Holy One, which brings the healing energy of heaven into your mind and your soul and your heart today. We have a lot of beautiful territory to cover in this parsha of Vayishlach, the eighth of the portions of the Torah cycle. This is a very special one. It has highlights, it has hints of the Messiah all the way through it. It's so relevant to the messianic vision, the messianic dream. Without understanding the things, the events, the mood of Vayishlach, it really is difficult to get a full grasp of who the Messiah is and what his personality is, what his purpose is. Vayishlach is our testimony in advance of what Messiah is all about and what he will do and who he will be. So welcome to this Sabbath gathering of the Biblical Lifestyle Center. Welcome to all my friends who are here, who have gone through their individual traumas and dramas this week. Welcome to all those who are joining us or who will join us from different lands, nations, Australia and South Africa and England, from all over America, from Canada, from Israel. I'm missing some places, a lot of them I know. But thank you for consenting to allow us to come into your home today and to speak joy and hope and messianic vision into your life. The wisdom of Torah be upon you. Now, if you would, all those who are joining us by internet, please, just so we know you were here, so we know who we're dealing with and who we're praying for, would you just leave your name, or a portion of it at least, and your location, general location, and any comments or any prayer requests you may have. Those of us who are here in the building, those of you who are part of the Biblical Lifestyle Center's regular fellowship, we'll have a lot of time to talk about that stuff afterwards. But we have about 80 minutes around the Torah in 80 minutes that you and I on the other side of this screen, this camera, will be talking about. Now, Vayishlach means "and he sent out," and it comes from Genesis chapter 32, verse 3, where Yaakov, after he leaves his confrontation with Laban, he's coming out of exile. He's coming out of 20 years in the house of a swindler, a trickster, a betrayer, a fleshly, materialistic person, a human being with all sorts of faults and like most of us have. He's coming out of a system, he's coming out of an environment, and he's carrying some baggage with him. And as he gets free, he makes a covenant, a mutual non-aggression pact with Laban and with his sons and with the people. He's going to go his way and they're going to go theirs. That's what we had at the end of last week. And this week he starts by, of all things, sending out messengers. Sending out messengers. Does it sound familiar to anyone else? Sending out, well, let's call them spies. Does that help? He's going to send out spies. Book of Numbers, chapter 14. We're going to see this parsha. Shalach lecha is the name of that parsha. Vayishlach, which is the same root verb, is here. We're going to see Yaakov send out spies. What is it about the captivity? What is it about our exiles? What is it about the situations of being repressed, suppressed, depressed, compressed, stressed that makes us want to rely upon information gathering, analysis, analyticals? What makes us want to get data and process data rather than rely upon the Holy One or listen to what he has to say or do what he says to do? Yaakov sends out messengers, and that's what Vayishlach is all about. It's about a process. And here's the deal. The Holy One has a glorious, very beautiful, very effectual plan to deliver Yaakov and all of us. from what I call exile slime. You could rephrase it as absorbed toxicity from cultures and situations and environments and institutions and forms that you have been in. The Holy One has a wonderful, beautiful, very effective plan to help us to download, unload, offload all of the exile slime, all the captivity toxicity, all the things that we have absorbed, the insults, the wounds to our soul that we have absorbed in our captivities, in our different institutions we've been in our different places we've come from, mindsets, cultural mindsets we've adopted. He has a glorious, beautiful, highly effective plan to do these things. Warning: it is not necessarily an altogether pleasant process. His plan has its ability to break you in ways that you have never been broken before. Captivity broke you in other ways. The Holy One's plan of delivering you from the toxicity of captivity will break you in ways that will make you whole. Does that make any sense to you? It will break you in ways that will take away the slime of the exile, take away the false narratives, take away the bondages, take away the bondages you have embraced and the limitations you have embraced in your exile period, in your times in other people's worlds, in other cultures' mindsets. It will break those things off of you, but it will first break you. And so this is the part that we're in Parsha Vayishlach. We begin with the idea that what do we really want? We want information. What do we really need? Not information. What do we really need? We need somebody to analyze something for us. We need analysts on the news. We need counselors. No, what we need is to realign, to readjust, to recalculate, to recenter. And to recenter only on the King of heaven and his will and his ways and his plan. This is a lesson we all have to learn. We are privileged to come out of exile. He calls us out of exile, out of captivity, out of bondages, out of institutional mindsets. He calls us to be alive, to be free, to be meaningful, to have meaningful lives. And we have been so oppressed, suppressed, repressed, depressed, and stressed in the realms that we are in that we do not even know how to be free. We do not know how to be whole. We do not know how to think the kingdom thoughts and speak kingdom words in kingdom vocabulary. We have absorbed all the toxicity of our world around us, of our culture around us. So we use their terms. We use their vocabulary. We repeat their narratives. We believe their lies. We accept their hates, the things they hate. We love the things they love. We have absorbed all of their toxicity. And so Parsha Vayishlach outlines the process, and I believe it's a messianic process of deliverance, of breaking us free from all these bondages, but it will cause you to break first. So I call this the Parsha of revealing the essential challenges and essential disciplines of return, of shaking off the exile slime, of facing and overcoming and transcending fear and hate and lust, of reconnecting with the rock from which we are hewn, the Holy One himself, and making him once again the center of gravity of our soul, of our mind, and of our heart, and of our life. This is the deliverance process. And we can send all the messengers we want, seeking to get a report from somebody else, but really this is a process we have to walk out by ourselves. We have to walk out with the Holy One, and that's the lesson that Yaakov will learn. The messengers are not his salvation. Even the things he does to make the messenger's message sweet is not going to be enough, because the messengers are going to Esau, to his brother, to the one who's threatened to kill him, to the one who hates him. Do you know anyone like that? Does your world contain anyone like that? Does it contain whole systems that are like that? Much less members of your own family that are like that. Does it involve other sides of ideological, political issues that are like that? They don't even want you to live. They want you to die. They have threatened your death. They have threatened your annihilation. They don't want you present. And you want to send messengers to them. And the Holy One says, well, we'll talk about what he says. But this is the parsha of revealing the essential challenges and essential disciplines of return, of shaking off exile slime, of facing and overcoming and transcending fear, hate, and lust, and of reconnecting with and recentering upon the Holy One as the be-all and end-all, the only, the echad of our lives. I would also call this the parsha of introducing the straight gate and the narrow way. As I said, this is all about the Messiah, and this is the essence out of which much of Messiah's teaching comes. So I'm going to repeat something I've said, kind of go over it one more time, because I'm not sure at the very beginning you were ready to hear it. The Holy One has a brilliant, highly effective plan. A plan of slime removal. A plan to make all things about you new. But it involves a straight gate. You have to pass through a straight gate. And that straight gate has a purpose. It is not just, he wants you to go through something really tight and really narrow and to hurt you. It has a purpose. That straight gate's purpose, first of all, has three. And what first is to purify you. To purify every facet of who you are. To purify your thoughts, to purify your mind, purify your emotions, to purify your will, to purify your relationships, your interactions with other people, to purify your vocabulary, to purify your narratives that you speak about, to purify your priorities, to purify everything about you. The straight gate is necessary to go through in order that you may be purified. Because in purification, what you get is a slime shedding process. To purify means you shed the slime. To purify means that you release the toxicity. To purify means you detox. And this straight gate of detox, if you notice it, even in the secular world or the world we live in, when you detox, when someone goes to detox, they are immediately pulled out of everything that they know, everybody that they know. They are excluded, secluded. They're put through a straight gate. The straight gate is you can't get phone calls, you can't talk to your relatives, you can't talk to your friends. You're going through, you volunteer for this process, you're going to be detoxed. And that's what the Holy One does. That's the first part of his plan, is to detox us by putting us through a straight gate in order to purify us and cause us to slime shed. To shed the slime. Or sled the shine. I don't know. Second part of this straight gate is that it returns us and our steadfast focus off of the things that we have known, the things that we've become familiar with in our exile and captivity, the principles, the ideas, the concepts, the abstract ideas, thoughts, the vocabulary, to take our focus off of that and not to replace it with some other system, but to center it upon the Holy One himself. That's why it's a straight gate. Only one figure is on the other side. Not a new ideology. Not a new political system, not a new sense of or institutions or organizations. The only thing on the other side of the straight gate, you know who it is, right? It's the Holy One himself. It's the glorious King himself. He is on the other side of the straight gate. He says you need to lose focus, lose interest in everything else besides the one on the other side of the straight gate. So returning our steadfast focus and trust and reliance and affection to him. In exile, in captivity, in systems and institutions, we begin to dilute our affections. We dilute our priorities. We pick up the institution or the system or the captor's priorities and affections. We pick up everything about them, and so therefore we have to find a way to focus back on who he is. This is our straight gate, second facet. Third facet is to establish prayer discipline. If we have any failure, any at present disastrous state in, and I even hesitate to call these things, but I'll use these terms because they're familiar, in the Torah observant movement, in the Hebrew roots movements, in the Christian Zionist movement, in any of these shiftings that we're seeing take place, if we have any one sincere, serious, very damaging lack, it is a lack of prayer discipline, I don't mean phony prayer. We've got that's all through the systems. I mean, the politicians will phony prayer on you. I mean, we do the same thing in the churches and in the synagogues. We do phony prayer. We just mouth words. And then we try to manipulate God with our words. He says, no, that will never get you out of your slime bucket. Your slime bucket is influencing what you're saying to me. I need you to pass through this straight gate of prayer, where it becomes a natural, like breathing to you, where it's like everything is a conversation and a basis for a conversation with the Holy One. What I'm saying right now is the basis for a conversation with the Holy One. The people I'm looking at right now, the lives that I'm seeing before me, the households that you represent, the bloodlines that you represent, all of you are a subject of conversation with the Holy One. You are not somebody for me to judge. You are not somebody for me to be angry with or to be enthused or excited about or affectionate toward. You are here to be an object of conversations with the Creator of the universe over how we are to interact and how I'm to respond to you and how I'm to react to you and how you are to be influenced in a positive way by me. And though I might disagree with everything you say or everything you are, or I might agree with everything you say and everything you are, it doesn't matter. My feelings do not matter. My opinions do not matter. What matters is, what is the Holy One wanting to do in that person, in that situation, in that circumstance, in that household, in that bloodline? That is our mission. So reestablishing prayer is a high priority. It is the essential priority of the straight gate, because you see, you can get to the straight gate without prayer, but you can't get through it. You can't pass through that straight gate without becoming a person who surrenders his heart and releases it through prayer. And so I call upon anyone who wants to identify out there as Torah observant or as Torah submissive or as Torah appreciative or as Hebrew roots or of any other of the movements that you see presently active in this world. And I don't identify with any of them. And I encourage you not to either. But nevertheless, I call upon you, if you are identifying with those movements right now, to adopt a passion for prayer and let everything else come behind it and flow from it, as opposed to trying to fit your prayer into some other category or some other pattern that the world or some other system of religion has used before this. We should be masters of the craft of prayer. And if we are not, then we are not followers of the Master. Just because we believe certain stuff, just because we act out certain practices, just because we talk a good game, if we're not masters of this craft, this art of conversational interaction with the Holy One over all circumstances and situations, then we are not followers of the Master. We are merely adopting some of his teachings or some of the people's teachings about him and trying to convince ourselves we are in that process. He was the master of prayer. Everything about him was, he only did what he saw the Father doing, Yeshua did. He only spoke those words which were given to him by the Holy One to speak. How do you do that? Through prayer. Through a lifestyle, through a transformational lifestyle of prayer. We're going to see prayer disciplines developed in Yaakov's life. For the first time in his life, he's really going to become a man of prayer. Abraham, we've seen it develop in him, in our first forefather. We saw prayer develop in him. It took a while. It took a time before he began to speak back. He heard the voice of the Holy One. Then he began to speak back to him. Then he began to discuss things with him. And then he began to negotiate with him. He began to have a conversation, a running conversation with the Creator of the universe. That happened in Abraham's life. Yitzhak, we saw the same thing developing. It took a while. It took a period. And then he taught us different ways of prayer. He taught us about suaking, about walking in the creation and having these conversations. He was in the field. That's where he was whenever Rivka and the servant came back from Padan Aram. He was out in the field. What was he doing? He was praying. He was having this suach meditation and prayers time, conversation with the Holy One. And that what made him so glorious in his appearance and his manner, his demeanor, that Rivka fell off the camel, okay? She couldn't even handle it. She couldn't handle being in his presence because she saw that level of dedication, consecration, and centering upon his life. Now, then we haven't seen this yet in Yaakov. Yaakov has dealt with some stuff. Jacob, as most of the Western people have tried to learn to call him. I guess it's easier to say Jacob than it is to say Yaakov. But anyway, his name is Yaakov, and he has not developed this. He's had a conversation with the Holy One in a dream. But he hasn't been able to develop this relationship where he actually converses with the Holy One and lays his heart bare before him and goes through this straight gate called prayer. The three things of the straight gate: the purifying process, the returning to steadfast focus to the Holy One on the other side of the straight gate process, and then the discipline of moving through the straight gate, which is through conversational, communicational, heartfelt prayer. That's just the straight gate. Once you get through the straight gate, Yeshua talked about something else. The Master tried to tell us, and in Vayishlach, we're going to see there's something else besides going through the straight gate. After you go through the straight gate, you still have a process to go through. It's called the narrow way or the narrow path. You've got to go through. So the straight gate we've defined. We're going to talk about the narrow path. It's constant accountability. There's three sides to a gate, and when you walk through the path, you have above, you have to your right, to your left, you have to in front of you, and you have behind you. I know that's a lot real fast. You have certain things that are behind you. You have certain person in front of you, because all we're doing, we're not going to material wealth. We're not going to some level of heaven. We're going to the Holy One. If you're going to heaven, and that's your focus, understand you're missing the point. You're going to the Holy One. You're going to his plan for you. It's not for your pleasure and you're going to his presence. Okay. So that's what's before us. What's behind us is the captivity and the slime we've left behind. And the trailing unclean spirits that holler at us, say, come back, come back. You don't really want to go that way. You really want to come back and enjoy the things that are greener. Grass is always greener on the other side of the hill. That's the front. That's what's behind. What's to your side? Adversaries. Scary ones. If they weren't there, you wouldn't stay on the path. You'd go venturing off, doing your own thing, finding your own way. But the adversaries are strategically placed there for you. This is a hard one to learn. This is not Christian theology. This is biblical lifestyle. God has ordained that you would have adversaries. He has strategically placed those adversaries, physical, real, and material, and also spiritual, around you so that you do not get tempted to wander off down those pathways again and stay on the narrow road. The road he has ordained for you, the road that leads into his presence. That's where you're going. That's the narrow road. So Yaakov has to learn, and part of this Parsha of Vayishlach is to learn to stay on the narrow road, to not get caught up and not get distracted. He's going to spend a lot of time, and a lot of this text is going to be about what happens in Shechem. Somebody tell me why Yaakov was in Shechem. Somebody tell me where it said that he was supposed to spend significant time and have Dinah, his daughter, get molested and raped, and have his sons turn into vigilante vengeance enforcers, doing the will of the Holy One, not according to his plan. In their mind, they were doing the will of the Holy One. They were doing justice. Where does it say this was what was supposed to happen? He went off the narrow road. And this is what happens when you get off the narrow road. Things begin to go haywire on you. And you say, why did this have to happen to me? He says, my child, You left the narrow road. You didn't heed the presence of your enemies. I set a table for you in the presence of your enemies, and you went out into the highways and the byways and did your thing. Well, the narrow road involves strategically placed and empowered enemies. There is a whole movement of one modern form of religion that's primarily geared toward casting out enemies the Holy One has placed in our life. And one particular one, and it's like, you don't get to do that. What you get to do is learn how to navigate and go through and stay on the narrow path. You stay on the narrow path, you don't have to worry about him. It's only when you're wandering in his territory that you have to worry about him. And if you've got a problem with him, the problem has to do with the fact that you have left the narrow path. Where did I leave the narrow path? That's the most important question you can ask. How do I get back? That's the second most important question you can ask. And only then can you worry about whether you need to have any kind of confrontation or a rebuke in that process. Well, I know I've messed up everybody's theology, but strategically arranged tests and challenges and strategically arranged adversaries are the narrow road aspect of what the Messiah tries to teach us. In this world, you will have a rose garden. Everything will be wonderful. I don't remember him saying it quite that way. To the contrary, my recollection actually is something along the lines of, in this world, you will have tribulation. Your job is to be of good cheer. Stay on the target. Stay focused on what's important. Not get distracted by the adversary. Fret not because of evildoers. This is who you are. This is why you're here. This is such a beautiful way. But I told you the plan to detoxify you, to detoxify us, the plan to get us free of exile slime is not one that we always will enjoy. It is one that has its rigors and its disciplines and its challenges and its lessons, sometimes the hard-learned lessons along the way. All right. Context. Where did we leave off? Last week in Parsha, where were we last week? We were in Parsha Vayetzi. Parsha Vayetzi last week, where did we leave off? The mutual non-aggression pact that Yaakov made with Laban and with Laban's son. Basically, we said, you don't come across this line, past this heap of stones to bug me, to cause me harm, and I won't come across this heap of stones or this boundary line to bug you. We'll mutually coexist in our own separate realms. You stay on your side, I'll stay on my side. You stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane. And that's what Yaakov did with Laban and with his sons and with the whole culture of the Babylonians, the whole culture of the Lebanese, as some of us may call it. All right, so Yaakov now has begun in earnest his prodigal son journey back home, but he's carrying junk with him. Many of us, and I could use many different formats because of the circles I run in and the people that I teach a lot of times. A lot of people are most focused upon leaving a religious oppression, a religious form of bondage, a religious form of disinformation. It could be political, and it is political. I assure you, you're going to see with the people of the Holy One, there will be plenty of people to argue politics. You will not. Your voice will not be missed. Your input will not be missed. But you will see you've already seen the vast exodus from Facebook and from Twitter. That's just a bigger part of an exodus that's coming. The exodus is coming and saying, yes, we will participate in voting. Yes, we will participate maybe in conversing with our political elected officials. Yes, we will be even maybe donate a little bit to a campaign here or there and maybe show up at a campaign event. But never again will we be seduced into hating other people on the basis of a political position. Never again will we allow politics to affect our emotions at such a level, at such a way, that we become toxic to the world around us and to our own families. And we can't even have a conversation with other people who have a different political viewpoint. Never again you'll see an exodus. We've already seen the Exodus. And unfortunately, this process of getting to this Exodus point is not painless. It's not painless. And we see horrible atrocities take place in the political realm. This is part of the plan because we've been wandering in places we don't belong. We've been off the narrow path. We've been trusting in things, centering our focus on ideologies and ideas and abstract concepts and vocabulary and words and phrases, as opposed to walking through the narrow gate with the Holy One doing what he's doing. We will not leave politics altogether because you cannot. But it will never again control our hearts or our emotions or our minds. May the Exodus begin today from that regard. Now, we left off with the mutual non-aggression pact, the prodigal journey back home, the junk he's carrying, he doesn't even know he's carrying from this exile. And so verse 32, chapter 32, verses 1 and 2 said, Yaakov went his way. He didn't go the Holy One's way. He went his way. And the angels of the Holy One met him. The angels of Elohim, it says, and actually, the angels of Elohim met him. What kind of guy is it that has these conversations and interactions with angels? Hopefully we all have these conversations and interactions with angels at the appropriate time. And it says when Yaakov saw them, this is the last part of last week's work, the last verses. When Yaakov saw them, I hope he didn't just pass by that. I hope it didn't just slide right by you. When Yaakov saw the angels. Did you get that? Yaakov saw, he perceived where the angels were and what they were doing. He perceived the spiritual realm around him. How did he learn how to do that? Well, he had the dream in Genesis 28, in the beginning of Parsha Vayetzi. And then he learned how to see what men are doing by being in the house of Laban. He learned how to differentiate between what angels are doing and what men are doing. There is a difference between what angels are doing and what either the Democrat or the Republican Party in America are doing. There is a difference between what one politician on one side is doing versus what another politician, and neither of them, however, are what the angels are doing. What the heavenly realm is doing, what the kingdom is saying, what the kingdom is speaking. So he saw them and he said, this is Elohim's camp. Now, almost reminiscent of his vision when he said, this is the house, this is none other than the house of God and the gate of heaven. That was back in Genesis 28. Do you have a vision for that? Where you are, where you live, where you trade, where you engage with school or with work or with commerce. That's the gate of heaven. This is Elohim's camp. This is not a conservative camp or a liberal camp. This is not a pro-life camp or a pro-abortion camp. This is Elohim's camp, and he's the only one. He's the only one that determines what goes on here. He is the one who sets the agenda. He is the one, not our ideology, not our position. This is Elohim's camp. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. It's two camps. It's like two parts of a cave we had with Machpelah. It's Mahanaim. It's the two camps. His camp, and then there's all our camps. And then there's my camp. Then there's the world's camp. It's his way or it's the world's way. Which am I going to choose? And we have these two camps laid out. The Holy One's plan, the agenda, the ways of the King of Heaven. You know, Yeshua taught it to pray this way. Your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There's the camp of heaven and there's the camp of earth. Make the camp of heaven and the camp of earth one. Make them, at least in my part of this camp, make it coincide, make our ways coincide. So here we are. We began this week with Parsha, this course book in slime removal, in purification, narrow path, straight gate. We begin this course about 10 miles east of the Jordan River. East of the Jordan River. We're not in the Promised Land. We're at least not as the Promised Land is constituted at the present time. 10 miles east of the Jordan, about 14 miles north of the place where the Yabok River or brook comes down, winds its way down, and intersects with the Jordan, has its mouth in the Jordan River. We're at a strategic location We're going to see this place again a few times in Scripture. It's particularly, well, I won't get into that. Here we are, and we're headed home, aren't we? Is that where we're going? Are we going to the house of the Father's house? Are we the prodigal coming home? Or are we on a Sherman's march to destroy everything we touch? Are we here to punish the people we disagree with? Are we here to state our opinion and tell them how we think and how we feel about what they're doing and what they've done? Are we here to correct them where they're wrong? Or are we prodigals on the way to the house of our Father? That's the question we have. We're about 10 miles east of the Jordan, 14 miles north of the Yabok crossing, and our last existential threat. Let me try that again. Our last existential, that's a hard word. Our last existential threat has been faced and overcome. But that's just the beginning. There will be more and more. There will be one after another, and we're going to see some pretty tight passages on this horizon that we got facing. So, what are the essential challenges and disciplines of return? This is the portion of learning those things. The essential challenges and disciplines of return. One is shaking off the residue of the exile slime. And to do it layer by layer. We can't, it would be nice if we could be like dogs coming out of a mud bath. You know what a dog does when he comes out of a mud bath? He shakes himself, and he keeps shaking, and he keeps shaking, and he keeps shaking. And don't be around him. Don't be close to him. Don't get your white outfit, your white pants, your white shirt, your white jacket, your white sweater close to him, because he's going to sling off every bit of mud, and he's going to do it in a course of a couple of 60 seconds or whatever it takes him to shake it off till he feels like he's free of that slime. It doesn't work that way for us. We have to take it off layer by layer. It's almost like we need scrubbing bubbles. We need Brillo pad. We need different layers of cleansing to get all that slime off of us. Because you see, with us, it absorbs into our skin. It then goes into our bloodstream. It becomes part of our thought process. It becomes part of our emotional makeup. It becomes part of our viewpoint of life, our worldview. And so it has to be taken out layer by layer. This is part of the essential challenges and disciplines of return. So first part of that is to surrender to the Holy One and His plan. Forsaking all other agendas. We'll get to that in a little while. Surrender to the Holy One and His plan and forsake other agendas. This is an outline. There are other factors we're going to talk about here. Before I go into the other details, I want to warn you about something that comes out of the forms of religion. We tend to spew words that we have heard before and never really think about them. I remember one of the forms of religion I was in, they kept spewing this phrase over and over again. I cover that in the blood of... And I got to where I could spew it just like they did. And I did all the time. It was what you did. That's how you did prayer. I did cover that. I rebuked that in the name and the blood, by the blood of... What the heck does that mean? What does that mean? What does it even mean? We use these phrases, we use these catchphrases, but we lose sight of what significance it has and what it really means. We just throw catchphrases at people. And we eliminate the need to deal with the Holy One by throwing out our catchphrases. I did my duty. I said my catchphrase. Well, what did you really do, though? How did you really impact the situation? This is the difference. And so every time I use one of these outline formulations, I do it hesitantly because I realize some of you will hear the phrases and say, I know what that means. And you'll go on about your business. So that was neat. I'll write that down as one of my notes. The first step of shaking off the exile slime, layer by layer, is to surrender to the Holy One and His plan. Do not think you know what that means. Do not try to fit that within any religious formulation you have ever thought of or known. Do not think this is a process you are already finished with. You are not. Do not think this is something for somebody else out there who's doing bad stuff. This is the danger we have when we speak a lot and we use phrases, and you hear phrases and you know phrases. You cease to understand there is a reality that is a gut-wrenching transformation that takes place here. Now, we're going to see Yaakov have a dark night of the soul. In our readings from the Apostolic Scriptures, we're going to read about Yeshua's dark night of the soul, the Gethsemane experience. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, oh, yeah, I surrender. Be my Lord. Come into my heart. I'm not talking about those kind of prayers. I'm talking about the ones where there's mighty sweat drops as of blood coming out of you. I'm talking about where we're actually surrendering something as opposed to mouthing words. We're actually giving up our right to have anything, our right to determine our own future, our right to be mad, our right to be right. When we give that up and we say, no, it's all about you, and it's willingness to surrender to the Holy One of His plan and forsake all other agendas. Well, I follow you, but I'm a conservative, a liberal, a Democrat, a Republican. No. You follow Him. You follow Him. Second aspect of shaking off the slime layer by layer. Second layer, burning the bridges. Talking about the mass exodus. The mass exodus of the religious systems. The mass exodus, it's happening. You've seen it. You're part of it. The mass exodus from the political intrigues and arguments and anger and angst. It's happening. It has to happen for the kingdom of heaven to arise on the earth. There will be plenty of people to argue that stuff. Don't worry. There's no lack of people fighting and fussing over those battles. Well, it doesn't need, well, anyway. Burning the bridges. Breaking the soul ties with the people, the places, and the institutions, and the assumptions and the addictive behaviors that you're leaving behind. Breaking the soul ties. This is part of getting rid of the layers, layer by layer, of exile slime. Laban's house. Your Laban's house may have been a political system. Your Laban's house may have been a religious system or formulation. Your Laban's house may have been a way of social interaction. It may have been a scientific or philosophical or other kind of theory. It may have been an education system. Whatever your Laban's house of control and manipulation over you has been, it makes you think a certain way, feel a certain way, respond a certain way to certain catchphrases. Whatever that was, this is the time to break the soul ties with the people, the places, institutions, assumptions, and addictive behaviors learned in exile. Number 3, to face and confront your deepest fears. Beloved, how can I say this as poignantly and as straightforward as I know how? We are not to be a people of fear. We have accepted fear because of our institutions, because of our exile. We've accepted fearing things as normal. It is not. Little fears, paranoias, pet fears, fears of a rejection, fears of failure, fears of doing stupid stuff, fears of violence, fears of germs, fears of viruses. We are not made to live in fear. Now, this is not an issue of mask or not mask. That's your own business, and take care of that as you see fit. Do what's reasonable. Just don't be in fear of that or anything else. Don't be fearing the Antichrist. Quit fearing the Antichrist kingdom. Quit fearing those things. We are to be masters of confidence, of understanding that the Holy One's will is all that matters anyway. So whatever the adversary may do to us, whatever some situation may happen to us, we will exercise wisdom and follow the instructions and stay on the narrow path. But if something bad happens, so be it. So be it. May the Holy One be glorified. May his name be praised. May his honor go forth. Facing and confronting our deepest fears. Whatever you fear the most, the Holy One knows you need to face it. You don't need to hold on to that fear. You know, I hate that because there's certain things I have grown to fear. I've been taught to fear from the time I was a kid. I won't go into them. I don't want to face them. But the Holy One knows that if I'm going to fulfill the purpose for which I'm going to need to serve, if I'm going to be who I was created to be, if I'm going to be the light and the salt to the earth, I have to face and overcome and transcend that fear and function irrespective of it in any situation. Facing and confronting deep-seated fears is one of his protocols for slime removal. Wrestling with angels and demons in those of flesh and those of blood. Over unresolved issues of identity and mission and destiny, not over abstract ideas or concepts or theologies or physiologies or practicalities. Taking responsibility for your wrongs, for your misdeeds, for the mistakes you made, for the manipulations you practiced, and making restitution if it can be made. That's going to happen with Yaakov. You'll see that take place whenever he's going to actually do something fascinating. I'll kind of fast forward into this story because we're going to be out of time. Part of the story, when he meets Yaakov, he sends all these droves of material possessions that he obtained. What was the blessing that he got, that he stole? The blessing that he stole was the material blessings of the rights of the firstborn as it was perceived and viewed. He took those material blessings, and he didn't take them with him physically, but they followed him where he went, and he got them in Laban's house. So when he comes out of Laban's house, comes out of his house of bondage, he brings all these, he gets 5 different categories. And see what they are. Camels, there's donkeys, there's flocks, there's male servants, and there's female servants. There's 5 different categories. He's just abundantly wealthy. And he sends them in front of him to give them to Esau. And his words are so beautiful and so poignant. Because Ephraim says, I don't need them. I got plenty. And he says, no. Take my blessing. Did you just hear what he just did? He just went back. He went there. He went there. The blessing was the whole issue that he had with Esau. And he says, no, I took your blessing. You take my blessing. And that's whenever Esau finally said, oh, okay, I get it. Now this is restitution you're making. This is Zacchaeus. This is Zacchaeus saying, I'll give back 4 times everything. I want you to have it. This day the kingdom of heaven has come to this house. Well, we see how that works out for Yaakov. Taking responsibility for and making restitution for our injuries and damages we've caused. Are you ready to do that? I mean, that means you don't self-justify. Well, I did bad. I mean, I've done right, but they were terrible. They deserved everything they got. They shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. This is what Yaakov's sons are going to say at the end of the Shechem experience. They shouldn't have treated our sister that way. Self-justifying. Doing things that the Holy One would never have told them to do. It's his job. He's got responsibility to take vengeance. Well, at any rate. 6, learning to trust the Holy One and his covenant. Learning to trust the Holy One and his covenant. Say, I know that. Do you? I mean, no, you don't. I'm just going to be real upfront with you and honest with you. No, you don't. If you did, you'd talk a lot different. You'd act a lot different. You'd behave. Your emotions would be in a lot more check. You'd be a lot more at shalom about situations that come up and controversies that arise and difficulties that you face, and you'd be a whole lot more at shalom if you truly did this, and if I did. And I'm not trying to pick on you. This is part of the training process of sons of the covenant, is we learn to trust the covenant and the one who made the covenant. Now, part of this is learning there is a Romans 8:28 road through every single situation. What is the Romans 8:28 road? God works all things together for good. This will shock you. No matter how bad the political situation is, no matter how bad the relational situation is, no matter how bad the other person treated you, no matter how horrible the anti-Messiah's one world order government looks, God works all. Yeah. No matter how dangerous the satanic adversary seems to be, God works all things together for good. It's totally revolutionary and shocking to realize that's happening. And all we have to do is get on the Romans 8:28 part of the road. Stay on the narrow path as opposed to the emotional trauma, drama, overreaction, fear, doubt, hate, envy, jealousy trail that leads off of the narrow path. Learning to trust in the Holy One and in His covenant. Do you believe the covenant? Do you believe what He's promised? Do you believe He's with you? And is that not what matters most anyway? Well, I could go off in that one a while. I won't. Instead of relying upon one's own strength, one's own wits, one's own information, what they got from sending out the messengers, what you get from sending out the spies, what you get from analytics and analysis and science and philosophy and religion and YouTube and trusting the Holy One and His covenant instead of your own strength, your own wits, your own knowledge, or your own alliances. Well, this is a challenge. Number 7, crucifying the flesh. This learning to make leave no provision for its appetites and its lust. If He wants to provide you something, good. It'll be like daily bread. But it will not consume your time or your energy or your passion, nor will it mess up your interactions with other people that you will be so self-possessed. So He's crucifying the flesh. And then renewing the mind. And then conforming to the image of and actually birthing the representation, the reproduction model of Yeshua, the Messiah, in the world. Becoming as the Messiah, becoming like Him. These are what is involved in shaking off the slime of our exiles. And that also involves overcoming existential threats. I'm going to get that word right before the day's over. Overcoming existential threats and overcoming the force of our own spiritual and physical inertia and not losing momentum and focus. All right. The first challenge of this parsha involves shaking off the excess slime. And I want you to know what that means. I want you to kind of get some feelings for what that involves. And there are 7 things that we'll talk about. I've drawn it from this parsha, this scripture. I'm not going to go through the scripture one line by line. I hope you've done that. Hope you will do it again before the week's over, before the Shabbat's over. But the first one I call caged bird syndrome. The first place, the way we have slime, we carry slime away from our religious system or our political system or our emotional system or our relationship that failed. The first thing we carry around is caged bird syndrome. I'll define that. A caged bird thinks that all that exists is the cage. And maybe some scary world out there with cats and people with guns and things that we've learned to fear. That's outside the cage. But if we get outside the cage, we're going to have to deal with, that's what life is. It's dealing with the cats. Dealing with the mean people with guns or with arrows or with political power or with whatever it is that could. This is caged bird syndrome. We lose frame of reference. We don't have the kingdom frame of reference because we're trapped in a cage. That's what captivity or exile does to you. A religious system does to you. A political system does to you. A culture does to you. An ethnicity trap does to you. You're a caged bird. And everything outside is scary and frightening to you and a little bit evil. It's damaging, so you just as soon stay in the cage, but if you get free, You just want to basically take your cage with you so you're safe. You want to build up walls that look like your cage. This is caged bird syndrome. We carry this with us when we come out of our exile. We want to build another cage. We want to substitute the cage we're in with another cage. I'll let you figure how that works in your own life when you come out of a particular religious system or a political system and you try to build another system or take on another system that's another cage. If you come out of organized Christianity and you go into organized Judaism, for instance, that's just one example. I mean, that's just so many examples. You come out of one movement, you go into another movement. Come out of one denomination, you go into another denomination. You come out of one fellowship or congregation, you go in another fellowship or congregation. You just substitute one cage, another cage for the cage you were in. Maybe this cage is hopefully a little better or more in tune with where you are right now. Cage bird syndrome. Do you have cage bird syndrome? Yes, you do. You are under some limitations of vision. You're under limitations of vocabulary. You're under limitations of perspective. You are under them, and that the Holy One knows this, and He wants you free of that. He wants to give you back kingdom perspective, kingdom vision, and kingdom vocabulary. Second issue that we deal with, we get with the slime of exile, is sensory deprivation. Sensory deprivation. We can't feel all things. We can't enjoy all things. We're put under limits. We're under rationing of one form or another. Social custom, mores, people will gossip about you and talk about you. People will put you in prison. We're under these restrictions of how, and so the sensory deprivation is intensified in any kind of an exile, any kind of a captivity. And what that means is that you have suppressed, pent-up emotions. And you have suppressed, pent-up appetites, urges, drives, desires. How does this play its way out? First thing, the pent-up emotions, they come out whenever the people you came from whom you came out come after you, or you interact with them again. Your emotions are the negative emotions are all focused upon the places you came out of, and the philosophies and the belief systems and the doctrines, the teachings, and the practices that this is like a smoker. Just quit smoking. Now take it to your religious context. You come out of a religious context. You come out of a political situation. You come out of a relationship. And who do you hate? Who do you blame it all? Who do your emotions rise up against? It's the people from whom you came out of. This is a normal part of the toxicity process. The key is to get over it and to move on and to be able to say, that was just a part of the phases. That was part of my Romans 8:28 road. I had to go through this. Now, that's sensory deprivation. Now, the appetites and the urges are another issue because we've had those things suppressed, and suddenly we may find ourselves wanting to do things, wanting to have experiences that are not permitted or not believed in, not liked in the place we came from, but are also not going to be part of our destiny and not part of our future with the Holy One. Well, I'll leave you to that. Then there is the slime of exile that I've labeled as brainwashing. It involves the world around us, the culture around us, the religious system around us, the political system around us, the relationships we're in. They all have this thing called virtue signaling. This is right, this is wrong. This is fair, this is unfair. This is moral, this is immoral. This is just, this is unjust. They have these phraseologies, and so in the context of the captivity, or the context of the relationship you're in, or the association you're involved with, you begin to absorb their position, their beliefs, their statements about what's right and wrong, their statements about what's fair and unfair, their statements about what's moral and immoral, their statements about what's just and unjust. We could go on with some other things, but those are the things you're going to see. Those are the ones that are most likely to be a trigger in you. You don't even realize you're carrying that out, and you believe it's true. You believe it's truth, and it's only a philosophy. It's only a viewpoint, one viewpoint in that regard. So getting rid of the virtue signaling. And the virtue signaling always involves moral relativity. In other words, it's moral for me, but it's not moral for you. It's immoral for you, but it's not immoral for me. I have a justification. I have an example. I have an excuse why it's okay for me to do it. You see this happening right now with the governors who are in the legislators say, you need to stay home and not go anywhere, and they fly to Mexico and have a party with. This is virtue signaling. It's okay for me to do it because I deserve it, but you don't deserve it. You're evil, and you see that flies in every process. It also involves double standards. I have one standard for me and for my cronies. I have a wholly different standard for you and your cronies. Watch yourself. You think that's only the politicians doing that. Careful now. This is going to get up your business. All right. This is another thing that has selective memory. Well, I choose to remember this. I do not choose to remember that. I choose to revise what happened, revisionist history. I choose, and in my personal life, in my political life, in government, I get tickled, and I'm going to offend somebody. I've done that before once or twice in my life. I don't mean to. Every culture, including the Native American culture, and the African cultures of sub-Saharan Africa, and the European cultures, and the Asian cultures, and the Arabic cultures. Every culture is equal in its depravity. Okay, do you get it? There is no moral supremacy in any ethnicity or in any culture. The Indians were not morally superior to the white people who came and did that. Everyone dealt with the situation they dealt with. They may have done it wrong. Everybody probably did it wrong. So when we get over this idea that somehow or other memory happened, that only the white man came and destroyed the poor Native American. If you want to believe that, go ahead. That's your selective memory. This was cultures that are having major issues in their godless society. They will kill one another. Somebody's going to kill the other one. It happened in this situation this way. In another situation, it could happen a totally different way. But no one culture is better than another. Selective memory. That my people wouldn't do that. Good people wouldn't do that. Yes, they would. Get over your moral supremacy. Get over your sense that you're better than other people. And you wouldn't make those mistakes or make those decisions that were gut-wrenching at the moment of time decisions. All right. Narrative reframing. The world around us, cultures around us, the media, they rewrite and reframe the narratives. They want you to think in a certain way with a certain perspective. And so they tell it a certain way. They keep repeating phrases. And they use things like they gaslight you. They make it all, it's your fault. You're to blame. You're the one who's messed up because you don't understand this. You're not enlightened enough. You're not woke enough to understand what we're saying. So therefore, we gaslight you. We cancel your culture, cancel your position. We're cancel culturers because we're more intelligent and enlightened than you are. And I see this happening in the political realm, but I also see it happening in the religious realm. I see it happen in the Torah observant movement. I see it happen in the charismatic movement. I see it happening in the worship movement. I see it happening all over the place. You're the ones who something's wrong with you. If you were smart, you'd be like us. You'd believe what we believe. You'd do what we do. Well, okay, I'll leave that there. Vocabulary rewiring. Redefining terms. I warn people all the time. I try to watch out for the words that I use. And listen to where I hear other people talk. Listen to what media says. Listen to what government says. Listen to what political, religious leaders say. I want to hear their vocabulary because what they do is, knowingly or unknowingly, volitionally or involuntarily, they adopt these things that I call buzzwords and catchphrases. And they are designed to be emotional triggers in you. Let me throw out one. Racism. Find it in the Bible. Find it in the narrative of the kingdom ways. Understand it isn't there. It's not referenced. It's not mentioned at all. It's not part of what we're to deal with. But listen to your culture, and it becomes the biggest thing in the world. I'm not in favor of it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just telling you, don't get fixated on it. This is what the world does. They throw out these emotionally charged buzzwords, the captivities and the exiles we're in, throw out these emotionally charged buzzwords and catchphrases. Pro-life. Look, I'm so with it. It's not even funny. I'm not trying to tell you I'm against it. I'm just saying, listen carefully. The phraseology, the vocabulary that's used. Don't just repeat. We're about dealing with God's plan and God's ways in every situation, not fixing our minds on abstract concepts and principles and rules. We're dealing with real people in real situations. All right. Buzzwords and catchphrase, what they are is manipulative triggers. Okay, how about all our conservative friends? Patriot. Patriotism. Patriotic. America. Make America great again. American exceptionalism. Catchwords, catchphrases, buzzwords that are designed to make something emotional trigger in you and manipulate you. And what does it manipulate you to do? To be angry with the other people who are not that. What about a patriot? He hates unpatriots. What is the deal? What do you do if you're an American exceptionalism? You hate those who want to compromise, with other countries. One world order people. You see what they've done to you? Instead of dealing with every situation from the viewpoint of the Holy One and his plan for that individual, his household, his culture, and his bloodline, we began to develop camps, multiple camps on the earth, not the camps of the Holy One. Next part of brainwashing is thought policing. This is whenever they tell you can't think that. You can't say that. You can't believe that. You're stupid. You're dumb. You're evil. You can't. This is where you become clingers and whatever else they call us, deplorables. And if you believe a certain thing, you're therefore subject to the thought police, to your mind control. Some of you might need to go back and read 1984 by George Orwell again and understand the idea of the thought police and how it works in your life. Worldview distorting. Okay. Another part of the slime that attaches to us is we get used to carrot and stick programming. What is carrot and stick? Here's a carrot, do good, and I'll give you the carrot. Don't do what I want you to do, and I'm gonna give you a stick. I'm gonna beat you. Carrot and stick. We begin to take the carrot and the stick. Church leaders do this. Political leaders do this. Fathers and mothers do this. Brothers and sisters do this. You do what I want you to do, and there's going to be something good in it for you. You do something I don't want you to do, or don't do something I want you to do, and man, you're going to pay for that. And we then do that to one another. We do it to our spouses. We do it to our children. We do it to our parents. Do you understand how the slime of exile, of carrot and stick manipulation, has now been brought into and made a normal facet of life, and it's not part of our covenant life. And with that carrot and stick comes the desire, the ability of the people and who are manipulating the whole system to control you by two factors. Fear. Remember I told you we're not to be people of fear. But they control you by fear. What you're afraid of. They give you somebody to be afraid of, something to be afraid of. Why do you hear all this? Is the political realm. Why are we always giving somebody to fear? Because they can control us if we fear them. If we buy into their fear, they can control us. They can make us do what they want us to do. We're controlled by fear, or we're controlled by lust, coveting, appetite. You'll get this. This is why I don't recommend that your basic theology be about heaven. Not that I don't believe in heaven. It's that if that's what you're in for, you're going to miss everything that's happening in between. And what we're doing now, what we're here to do now. Okay. Carrot stick. Reliance syndrome. The reliance syndrome of exile is you need us. You need my money. You need my approval. You need my affirmation. You need my respect. They can control you. If you need their respect, if you need their money, if you need their affection, if you need their admiration, they can control you. The Holy One doesn't want you to be controlled by anything except Him. Whew. And then there's Stockholm Syndrome, where, well, we justify what the captors have done to us. Well, we were really bad. We really did this. Our people have done some bad things, and you know, whether it be America or the Caucasian, somebody's done something bad, and therefore, well, I guess I understand why they're doing the things they're doing. It's okay for them to riot. It's okay for them to break into windows and kill people and murder in the street. It's okay to burn buildings down because you know what? It hadn't always been good. This is Stockholm Syndrome. We agree with the captors that we are the ones to blame and we should be punished for what they have done and what they've done. Well, that's Stockholm Syndrome. We justify their attitude and behavior and we self-blame. That's slime, exile slime. And finally, there's post-traumatic stress disorder, where it's just a matter of time until we explode on somebody. We're going to bug out. That's what post-traumatic stress people do. They either bug out and check out and are totally unresponsive to anything going on. They move into the room, or they rant and rave and go violent. So this is what happens whenever we've got PTSD. Part of it, and Yaakov experienced this last week with Laban. What happened with Laban? Laban comes in, chases him down for 7 days, catches him at the hill of Gilead, catches the camp with his army there ready to tear Yaakov apart. And he's all upset because Yaakov left in the middle of the night, took his family, his grandchildren with him, and somebody took his idols. So he wants to search the camp. He searches the camp. Rachel plays a deception trick. She puts the things underneath her saddle seat, and she says she's in the way with women, and so he doesn't check under the seat. So she gets by with hiding the. Now that's all. And what does Yaakov do? Well, he waits till Laban gets finished searching everything and comes up and can't find him. And he throws a rant that is worthy of any PTSD person in the world. He starts going through how horrible Laban is and how bad he got treated, and he starts making stuff up. I mean, I didn't get to sleep any nights because I was out there taking care of your stupid sheep. And if they died, I had to pay for them. And if anything happened to them, I had to pay for them. And he goes through all this scenario, and he rants and raves. And finally, he comes to the very end of it. The very end of his rant, he just raging. I can imagine his face is red, and his nose is bulging, and his lips are quivering, and he's got his club in his hand, and he's got all. I just picture it, and he's shouting at the top of his lungs at old Laban, who had some coming. And he shouts at him, and I can see him with his club raised and about ready to strike out in anger. And then he says, "If it had not been for the God of my father and the God of Abraham." And I imagine his voice slowed down, and his tone changed, and his club came just down, and his nose went back to its normal position, and his lip quit quivering, and he shrugged his shoulders. And if it had not been for the God of my fathers, God of my ancestor Abraham, but he did. And I survived. He didn't. And this is what I hear him saying. This is what I hear coming out of Yaakov at that stage. But I don't have to hate you. I don't have to yell at you. I don't have to be angry at you. I don't have to worry about you. Because you see, God is here. He is working all things together for good. And so all the bad stuff you did, count it as naught. This is why I believe Stephen, because they say the same thing. Oh, don't lay this into their charge. You're with me. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. None of this stuff matters. Don't hold this to their charge. Oh, Yeshua, father, as he's sitting there with the nail and the spikes that were driven by the very people, he says, Father, forgive them. Though they swung the hammer, they didn't know what they were doing. Though they cried, crucify him, they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand what they were doing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's your business, not my business. Now, this is that process of learning how to overcome, work out this post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I see it all the time when I see people of the Torah movement. Lord help us. You go on some of these panels or boards, which I'm on, and you see innocent questions get asked. How about this one? Is it okay to observe Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication? Or is it okay to still have a Christmas tree and give presents to your grandchildren? You get on these boards with me, and you look at the hate and the anger and the self-righteous tones that you see coming out of some of the people in the name of the Holy One. And it's like, I'm never going to ask another question ever again. You see people crumble and wilt and wither under this post-traumatic stress reaction of Torah-observant people who haven't got over it yet, and who therefore would love to massacre anybody who was going to put a Christmas tree in their house. Which, look, I'm not in favor of it. I don't recommend it. But I also don't recommend you get massacred for it. And if you got to work your way through it, work your way through it. See the value of getting focused on what really is God saying. Let's talk about the good stuff. Let's talk about where we're going, not where we've been. Well, at any rate, this is part post-traumatic stress disorder. And it happens the same thing with charismatic people who learn to worship by raising their hands and other people don't, or who speak in tongues and other people don't. And they now rant and rave against those people who don't do that thing. This is a process we go through. And this is part of the straight gate and the narrow way, to learn how to overcome. Recognize these things are in ourselves. It's part of our residue that we carried out of exile. It's unfortunately, it's part of the process we have to go through. So we'll learn the lessons and see the damage we do whenever we do stuff like that. Remember the Torah of the beautiful captive. Anybody know what the beautiful captive is? Deuteronomy chapter 21. Deuteronomy chapter 21. Moshe's really hitting the download release. And he says, now, when you go out to war, you're in your land, and then you go out to the war, and you come across all the enemies, and you defeat the enemies, the Holy One delivers the enemy into your hand. When in the process you do that, you're going to see among the captives that you've taken, there's a beautiful foreign woman. There's a beautiful one. And you're going to be enamored with her, and you're going to want to bring her home. You're going to want to take her as your own. Folks, you are the beautiful captive. This is a picture of you. You are the beautiful captive in the culture, in the ethnicity, in the nation, in the institutions that you were in. You are the beautiful captive. He says, you're going to want to take her home, but she's not ready for you yet. She's not ready for you to interact with on the same level. You need to understand that we got to go through a straight gate, and we got to go through a narrow path to get her to a place where you can even consider the possibility that you are compatible with her, and she would be compatible with you. And so what does he say? So you are to bring her home to your house, and she is to shave her head and trim her nails, and she is to put off the clothes of her captivity. And she is to stay in your house and mourn, weep over her mother and her father, the last point of reference she had, for a full cycle of the moon. And then we'll talk. Once you go through this process, then we'll talk. What is he saying? Why am I relating the Torah, the teaching of the beautiful captive, which is you, which is me, which is us, which is all those who are being delivered at this moment, all across the world, in every culture and ethnicity, away from the trappings, away from the prisons, away from the bondage houses of our cultures and our ethnicity. What am I saying this? Because you understand, we're going through this cleansing process. We're going to go through this straight gate and narrow way, just like the beautiful captive had to do, we were told to do. Make sure you understand. Take off the hair, the things that we've been attached to, dedicated to, consecrated unto. The hair is a symbol of consecration. What have we been attached to? We need to shave it and start all over again with a new attachment. Well, then to cut the nails, the weapons that we use, the way we interact, the way we touch, the way we defend ourselves, the way we make war. That it needs to be trimmed. We need to take away all of our weapons of warfare, all of our weapons of injury, of self-defense even, and take those away from us so that we don't cause more damage. We got PTSD. We got issues during that process. And then it says, put off the clothes, the outer garments, all the vocabularies, all the false narratives, all the triggers of emotional triggers and manipulative triggers that the cultures have put into us. Take that stuff off. Put away the clothes of our captivity. And then remain and weep for the last center of gravity we had. Say goodbye. Leave it behind. Take it off. Leave it behind. What was the mother and father in that situation with the beautiful captive? Who was the mother and father? That was the last center of gravity she had. The last thing she could rely upon. The last thing she could trust in was her mother and father. He says, no, you're going to have a new mother and father. You're going to have a new father at least. You're going to have a new father on the other side of the straight gate. And you need to be able to say you've fully grieved all that you've lost. Because if you carry back any wanting to put the vision of that father on this father, you've done him a disservice. And if you're still going to blame your mother and your father for what happened to you, you've done yourself a disservice. You need to leave behind this issue of all your center of gravity that you've been under and walking through. The system of spiritual authority. We could have a long talk about that. We don't have the time to talk about. Everything you ever know about spiritual authority, this is your mother and father. Weep for them, but move on because you have a new authority. And that authority is going to take you where you could never go into that previous level or formula of spiritual authority. Well, that's the next thing that he's going to teach us is to overcome and transcend that which we fear. Esau was the one he feared. His brother. The wrath. Partially because he knew part of it was somewhat deserved. Part of it is because he's been fighting with Esau since the womb of Rivka. And he has woken up many times under the oppression, so he's afraid of Esau. It says he was very afraid. As Torah tells you, it wants you to know, whatever your fear is, we have to face it and overcome it. And not through manipulation and technique. Why did Esau not attack Yaakov? Why didn't he do what Yaakov thought he was going to do? Well, it was because he sent him all these droves. No, he didn't even want the droves. He tried to give them back. He didn't want the droves. Why did Esau not attack Yaakov? If you read the story, it's amazing. Whenever Yaakov and Esau met, after Yaakov sent the droves and the wives and the children before him, actually before them, before the wives and children, he comes forward and he walks toward Esau with a limp, without a weapon, without claws, without any, and he comes and 7 times he bows down before Esau. 7 times he acknowledges his humility, his lack of superiority, his inability to control the narrative or any aspect of it, and he bows 7 times. And somewhere in the process, it's like Esau says, I'm putting words in his mouth, I'm sorry, but that's what I see or what I hear. Esau says, I'm a hunter. I'm a warrior. I got 400 men watching me. Armed warriors, all. Hunters, strong men. If I attack this helpless idiot that bows before me 7 times, that has no weapon, I'll have to live that down the rest of my life. And in the heart, in his heart, the Holy One turned what was rage and anger out of Esau, and he turned him into a little sentimental pussycat. Don't believe it's anything Yaakov did. It's what the creator of the universe, trust in the covenant. Trust in the author of the covenant. That's how you overcome fear. The only way. And Yaakov could have run the other way. No, he went forward. He kept moving forward. The passage I like to refer you to is Exodus 14, verses 13 through 50. And Moshe said to the people, this is at the Sea of Reeds. This is at the Sea of Reeds. And the Pharaoh's army, his cloud of dust is there, and they're ready to attack. And Moshe said to the people, do not be afraid. Lo tira, oh, don't be afraid. Easy to say. And he says, stand, and Yatsab's to stand firm, to take a stance, to stand and see. Behold, Yeshua Adonai. The Yeshua of Adonai. In English, you're going to read salvation of your God, of the Holy One. You stand and see what? The Yeshua of Adonai. All right, stand and see, which he will build and make it take place and manifest for you today for the Egyptians who you see today, you will never again see forevermore. Now, there would be Egyptians, but we would never see them that way ever again. We would never be afraid of them ever again. We would never have this fear. It's like Yaakov and Laban. I don't have to ever be afraid of you ever again. I can make a covenant of non-aggression with you because I don't have to judge you. I don't have to hate you. I don't have to condemn you. I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. I'm free of that fear. And this is what he says. Don't be afraid. Stand and see the Yeshua Adonai, which he will manifest for you, and you will never see these Egyptians that you see before you this way. But again, the Holy One will fight for you. Do you believe that? Do you know that is true? When you face your worst enemy, when you face your deepest fear, do you know that the creator of the universe will fight for you? I'm going to let it pause for a let this you hit. He will fight for you. And all of his fighting is a whole lot worth more than a whole lot of your fighting. Or you're running, or you're screaming, or you're shouting, or you're judging, or you're blaming, or you're gaslighting other people. His fighting is worth it all. He says he will fight for you. And in English it says that, and you will be at peace. You will keep your calm, keep your shalom. That's not what it says in Hebrew. It says in Hebrew, and you will harash it, which means you will inscribe it. You will write it. You'll take account of it. You'll make note of it. This will be part of your testimony forever. This will be part of your story forever and ever. You will harash it. Stand and see the deliverance, see the Yeshua Adonai, and know he will fight for you, and you will write it down and tell your generations about it, and leave it for the testimony of the world. And the Holy One said to Moshe, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel, Yisah, get up and walk. Get up and go forward. Just go. Don't sit there and whine. Don't sit there and cry. Don't tell everybody on Facebook how bad it is. Don't sit there and complain. Get up and go and do it. This is part of getting rid of the slime, the exile slime, the captivity toxicity. To learn, we can trust God to fight for us, and we will take note and make a testimony out of it, and we will get up and just go, and whatever happens, but to the glory of God may it happen according to his will. All right. Now the final, and we'll go. Final challenge of return is to, I call it weigh anchor. To reset the rudder. To relocate the North Star. To recalibrate our tuning fork to true tone. To true pitch. We've been playing off key. What would you do if I sang out of tune? We could all be singing this song right now to the Holy One. What would you do if I sang out of tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? No, you wouldn't. But I need to get back in tune. I need to get back in tune here. I want to get back into true tone. I want to recalibrate to the true pitch. I want to get relocated to the North Star. I want to weigh anchor. Pull up all this trappings that I've got that hold me where I am and keep me stuck where I am. And I want to reset the rudder. I want to reset. The rudder is that which you put on the front of the ship, the boat, to cause it to go a certain way. You turn the rudder and the force changes and moves it a different way. You see it direct. It's like a steering wheel in the car, but it has a particular function the way it deals with your environment of water. It's the rudder. Reset your rudder. I want to reset my rudder away from the circle I'm going in. This pattern that I keep pursuing, keep seeing. And I want to go forward. I want to move forward into the realm on the narrow road of the Holy One. I call it, and the scripture I would point to you is Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 9. And I'll have to end because we're out of time. But here's what that says, basically. First of all, it says, fear only the Holy One. There's one you fear, and that's the Holy One. Not men, not what they can do to you, not rejection, not failure, not your past coming to light, coming to bruise. Don't fear fear the Holy One and Him only. And it says, hear, Shema, O Israel. And it says the Holy One, your God, He is Echad. And we see it read in English as one, and we think we're talking about numbers. He's the North Star, is who He is. He's all that matters. That's who He is. He's all in all. That's who He is. He is Echad. He is all things wrapped together in one. Nothing else matters besides Him. This is how we overcome. This is how we get rid of the slime of exile. We realize only one thing matters. Only one person exists. It's Him, and it's His will, and it's His ways, and that's all that matters. And our will, our ways, we just bend, we bow. We surrender because He is good. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Love Him means, and He defines love as doing what He says. Love is not an affection you feel for Him. He defines it. Yeshua defined it. If you love me, you will obey my commandments. You will do what I tell you to do. That's what love looks like in Hebrew thought. It is not about how you feel ooey-gooey towards Him and singing nice songs, love songs to Him. It's about how you do what He says to do. If you follow His rules, His ways, His narrow pathway. So he says, love Him with all your heart, which is with full, undiluted passion. Undiluted, uncompromised. Means there's things in this world that you've liked a lot, that you approve of in a lot of ways, but you give them up in a New York minute. They are not what's going to give you that joy. They're not what's going to give you hope. They're not what's going to give you peace. Only Him. You're going to find your peace, your shalom, your hope, your life, your joy, your purpose, your meaning, only in Him, not in your culture, not in your American system, not in your South African or Australian system, not in some English, British system, none of that. Not in your Mexican or Canadian system. We are going to find our joy, our hope, and our peace, whoever the president or the prime minister is. We're going to find it in the Holy One. And it is going to be more than enough. It's going to be so glorious. It's going to change the atmosphere around us. With all your heart. Remember Genesis 6:5? What does it mean to do something with all your heart? Remember Genesis 6:5 before the flood? It said, every thought and intent of man's heart was only, English we say evil, continually. Ra was only self-absorbed. Every thought and intent of the heart, all your heart, every thought and intent of the heart was only self-absorbed, self-promoting, self-perpetuating, self-interested all the time. Now, let's change that. Now let's change the direction of what we're doing with all of our heart. Every thought and intent of our heart. And doing it only with the Holy One in mind. He becomes all that we are. This is why the Shema is so powerful. Love Him with all your heart. Love Him with all your soul, with your will. You will to love Him. You will to do His will. I come to do your will. In the volume of the book, I come to do your will. I delight to do your will, O Father. This is what Yeshua taught. And to do it with your will, with your mind, with your thoughts. Do not let your self-talk or your thought processes or your meditations drift and wander to the things this world is trying to stay focused on it and keep coming back to the main thing, loving with all your soul. And that includes your emotions. All your emotions subjected. Before I will let myself feel anger, I've got to pass this through you first. Before I will let myself feel happy, I must process this through you first. Before I let myself feel in any way, with any emotion, I will process it. Before I feel fear, I will process that through you first. This is loving with all your soul. And then with all your strength, all your sustenance, all your talent, all your time, all your energy. Do you sing? Who do you sing to? What do you sing about? Do you play guitar? Do you play keyboard? Do you play an instrument? What do you play? What are you singing? What is your message? Do you quilt? Do you sew? Do you cook? Do you draw? Do you sculpt? What do you do with that talent? What do you do with the energy and the time that you put into developing that talent? What is it for? This is when you love him with all your strength. Those things are not tied up in the secular realm. They're not tied up in other forms. They're tied up in serving and honoring him, and that's all they're for. They're dedicated to that purpose. Okay. I have run out of time. I pray that I've awakened. I haven't. I pray before I come into these rooms. Like every time, I said, okay, if you could take me out of the way just for a second, and you would only say what Yeshua is saying into real lives. Those on the other side of the camera, those on the other side of these tables. If it's only him, would you please use my mouth to say only that which it is? So when I say I hope I have awakened some challenge in your heart to get rid of some exile slime, I know that it's not me, and nothing I've said could do that. If he has been speaking to you, then you are ready to hear it, and you are ready to move on. You're ready to move into it, and you're ready to hit the straight gate and go to the one on the other side and walk with him along the narrow road. And if you're not, we'll see you again next week. Blessings to everybody. Shabbat shalom. Please leave your name and your place where you are. We'll pray for you, I promise. We do. Amen.